So welcome to everybody that is joining us via Zoom. We are not going to broadcast on Facebook because we're not sure how exactly this would work out in this situation with all three of us sitting here. I wanted to see how it all work out, and especially with the sound, with all of us in one room together. So I'm actually very lucky to be here with Dr. Rao and Dr. Singer, so thank you. So this webinar is on energy medicine and acupuncture. So we're first going to talk to Dr. Rao, and we're going to keep things broad. So as I've said before, I am Kendra Nielsen-Miles. I am the Executive Director and Founder of EDS Wellness, and this is a webinar part of our educational series, video webinar series, educational series for patients. And today we're talking about acupuncture and energy medicine, maybe yoga nidra. This is not necessarily specific to just managing EDS or hypermobility related conditions. This is more just broad for chronic illness and managing chronic pain. And this is for educational and informational purposes only, not to take over anything that your doctor told you to do or not do. And we'll try to answer questions in the chat. So welcome to those that are joining us. Thank you. And if you can answer questions in the chat or in the Q&A, but it'll be kind of more of like a casual Q&A style interview since we're, okay? I'll ask the questions to Dr. Rao, let her speak, and then to Dr. Singer too. And they'll share a little bit about their own journeys going from traditional medicine to more integrative medicine. Okay, and so we'll go ahead and get started. First, Dr. Rao is going to talk about acupuncture. And what is acupuncture? What does it help?
So I trained in acupuncture about 20 years ago when I first got out of residency. I was practicing in New York, and very quickly, as Dr. Gina Singer also knows in medicine, we have many tools. We basically have medications, we have referrals we can give for specialists, and we have surgery, which takes out things that are broken. But I found that a lot of people didn't have these, crisis level issues. They had fatigue, they had irritable bowel syndromes, things that were life-threatening but very inconvenient. And some of my patients started talking to me about acupuncture, which they had to say it under their breath because the type of practice I was in, they were traditional. And even when I had said I want to become an acupuncturist, they said, we're not that practice. So part of it is that we are trying to develop tools for patients that really gave them back healing potential and the ability to heal without medications sometimes, or even supplements. So I'm always looking for those tools, and acupuncture was life-changing for me in terms of a practitioner. Acupuncture has been around for thousands of years, and the Chinese developed this system of based on a lot of observation of energy flow, and I think that this is the topic of the webinar today, is the energy concept. And the Chinese developed these meridians that traveled from our foot to our head, then down our back, and the main meridians, and there's several different types of meridians, traveled the energy called qi, which went through the channels, and they were basically 360 some odd points that traverse them. And what regular energy flow through the body, which has also been substantiated by other cultures such as Ayurvedic and Indian chakras and other energy medicine type of concepts, is that when energy flows regularly, healing and health is maintained. And so the concept for acupuncture is using acupuncture points to move energy in those meridians that are blocked, and blocked energy creates symptoms. So we use acupuncture needles, which are FDA approved and that are hypoallergenic, to use in certain combinations that can alleviate several different concepts of symptoms complexes that are out there. Now, the science behind acupuncture is evolving, and there's a lot of data coming out now that the NCAM, which is the NIH's subset of complementary alternative medicine, does list it as a valuable tool for adjunctive pain management, especially with low back pain, with headaches, with neck pain. It is something that's substantiated by research, and it goes back to the concept of how does this work, which will be kind of related to the fact that these peripheral points are on sensory nerves, and they contact with our peripheral nerves, which then contacts to our spinal cord, as well as contacts to our brain. So it's a connection between peripheral points and our brain. That's one way to look at it. We also know that there's data in the research with oxidative stress that it lowers free radicals. Antioxidants are really important for the oxidative stress that are caused by many things: pollution, chronic pain, different things that we're doing, sedentary lifestyle. It all creates stress in our body, and that stress can create free radicals, which acupuncture has been shown to minimize free radicals. The other thing that it does is it can support the immune system. So natural killer cells go up and immunoglobulins change. We've seen that through data that acupuncture needles placed in certain points can do that. Or cytokines, so interleukin 17 and TNF alpha, and these are big cytokines that are involved with chronic pain syndromes and with chronic illness. So we know that it can modulate the immune system. So having said that, that is kind of the subset of research that surrounds it. My premise is also that I strive to find tools for my patients to kind of incorporate more of a parasympathetic approach, because most people who I see are on sympathetic overdrive, whether it's even in POTS or with EDS, it doesn't matter. The chronic illness drives us into a fight or flight mode. And so it really does support the concept of improving that parasympathetic, which offsets that fight or flight response. And acupuncture is one of my tools, along with a lot of the things that Dr. Singer will say, including mind-body connections with Yoga Nidra and many tools that are there for supporting your parasympathetic. So healing, my belief is that healing begins with the parasympathetic support.
So you were traditionally trained, you've spoken at Lollapalooza, you've spoken at the Physicians Conference, you've also done webinar, but you were a traditionally trained medical doctor in internal medicine, and then you went back to school for acupuncture.
Yes.
And that was because you wanted more modalities to help treat patients. But what about acupuncture really was this that you were drawn to?
So I think the biggest thing was my patients were doing it and they were getting better outside of the realm of what I thought was proportional to the input. So for chronically ill patients who had been in chronic pain or with quote unquote fibromyalgia, using acupuncture for their headaches made them have more energy. So it wasn't just like a drug usually works for one thing, so acupuncture started to kind of improve quality of life as a whole. They were getting treatment for carpal tunnel, but they were sleeping better. They were getting treatment for their headaches, but their bowels were moving better. So I just thought that one input could cause so many positive benefits. So it intrigued me. And when I moved to Maryland, I started training in it because I wasn't allowed to do it when I was
So you're basically practicing, but also going to school to become an acupuncturist.
Well, because I was frustrated at my tools. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't like practicing medicine that you don't kind of full-heartedly believe in. I mean, all I had were meds and referrals to specialists.
Right.
That was pretty much it.
And clearly our system is not necessarily helping people in the best way possible. Yeah. And we need more modalities. So in terms of when we talk about energy medicine as a whole, as an umbrella, would you consider acupuncture to also fall under the umbrella?
I believe so. I think that it's based on meridians or a form of energy called chi. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is in that whole realm of chakra medicine, and I'm not as skilled in the other modalities, but I do believe that electromagnetic energy are affecting us. I mean, when I see the changes when I have my patients work with Dr. Singer, or we have the Reiki inputs that we have in combination with acupuncture, transformation is incredible. And I don't have a great explanation for it. It's not a placebo effect if it happens 100% of the time. Yeah. Placebo effects typically with drugs are 30% of the time. And you know what? I'll take the placebo effect if it's the placebo effect, because why not get someone better without doing harm?
Now, what if somebody says, I really would like to try acupuncture, I'm afraid of the needles, or maybe I didn't have a great experience with the needles before, or even a practitioner that maybe they went to before? What kind of broad antidotes could you suggest to somebody that really wants to try it, wants to incorporate it, maybe believes even in the science, but just didn't really have a great experience, whether it was through the needles or the practitioner? I think makes a big difference too. I mean, somebody's not jiving with somebody, that's important too. That is energy.
Well, I think it's about trust in the practitioner. When I have someone who comes in fearful of needles, or especially someone with POTS or where their autonomic system's off, I tend to use less needles and use less time in the beginning, because you can really cause a rapid change with their blood pressure falls. So you have to be kind of attuned to going to a provider that I think is knowledgeable about what you're coming in for, but also I think it's implicit trust in that provider too, because you know what, acupuncture is not a miracle. It doesn't work overnight. It sometimes takes 6 to 12 weeks to see change, mostly because it is not in isolation of other things. I'm a very big believer in lifestyle. So if you're doing acupuncture, but you walk out to a very stressful home with toxic environment and eating poor diets, it's very unlikely that that response will be sustained. And sometimes you get worse before you get better,
right,
which is a very normal and natural issue of healing.
Right, and modality or one pill to be the saving grace for in public health, we call it the 7 pillars of wellness. If you're not taking care of all the other pillars as well, and you're just expecting one thing to be it, whether it's diet or exercise, or one modality, it's usually not. You have to handle all the things. It's usually your personal recipe that works best for you, and it could include acupuncture. Could be one of those things that may or may not help you.
I think that there is a team approach to health, and I think the more people that you have as your health advocates and your coaches and your ability to learn from them, each modality gives you a certain aspect. But I will tell you that people who come with chronic illness, but they utilize the services of Dr. Sager or Reiki or acupuncture in conjunction with all of the things we do and do it regularly, their improvement is much more substantial in terms of the time it takes for them to feel better.
Well, it's also you as a patient into, and understand your part in your health.
Yes.
Like you and I have talked before, I can't just go have tests and then just expect to not come in and talk about the tests or things like that. I mean, the patient has to, we have to do our part to help our providers or our healthcare team help us. We can't solely rely on our providers or a modality or anything. We also have to do our own part at home. That includes a lot of sometimes really, really hard work. It's really, really tiring. We don't necessarily want to do. We don't want to do all of it. Why can't it just be one thing? Well, and it can be quite frustrating.
Just a simple anecdote is when I first met Dr. Sager, I saw her in my old practice, and she was doing a workshop on meditation. And I knew nothing about meditation at the time. I thought, oh gosh, I tried it a couple of times. It just didn't work for me. I just couldn't even close my eyes for 2 minutes. My brain was too hyper, which I realized that is the exact person that needs meditation. You need to calm your mind. And she did. Her voice to this day, every time I listen to her, I go into parasympathetic mode like that. So it calmed me down so much. I felt like someone gave me Valium. She did a 5-minute meditation in our waiting room, and I thought I was drugged. I felt so calm and peaceful, and it was the most amazing thing. And then I started doing it regularly. She had a workshop, and I did it every week. Every Wednesday was the workshop, and every Thursday morning somebody would say to me, "Did you just go on vacation? Yeah. Did you just get a lot of sleep? Did you just get something changed, right?" And even color started to change. That was when my belief in the mind body and the power of the mind started. And I have been such a follower of Dr. Sager and her journey, and she's a mentor to me as well as my healer. I'm so happy that she's part of our practice now, and I'm so excited to offer her services to my patients. But I'll let her talk about what she does. But I do, that the providers as well are going on a journey that I find helpful to me. I bring to my practice because I think it's really important to walk the walk and talk the talk as well.
I think that's super important too, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because before we switch gears and talk to Dr. Sager, I think what's the most important thing that you mentioned and brought up that is so true even for me as a patient is that we can talk about all these things, but if we're not walking the walk, or if maybe something isn't jiving for us, we have to be able to pivot and recognize that and look in the mirror too. And it's funny because you talked about meditation. I'm sure you had already been talking about it or suggesting it to patients, but then it wasn't until you fully found your own way that resonated with you that really made the shift. And I think that's really what it's about. And that a lot of people get really hesitant about different types of meditation and what does it mean, specifically yoga nidra. That was the type of meditation that really clicked for me. For many reasons, but even then, even much as I love to do it and be a part of it, the practitioner makes a difference too, in the voice of somebody. So I'll let you talk more about that. But if anybody has questions, we will answer those towards the end. But I would like to shift gears to introduce Dr. Gina Singer. I am going to make sure that you can see you a little bit more. Do you mind?
No worries.
Coming up a little bit far. I hope everybody can hear us. I feel like we're like really.
It's okay.
Okay.
You can come close that
Okay.
way.
Okay, it's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So Dr. Gina Singer, please. I'm so thankful to have you here, and I feel odd because I've never done this necessarily, except with Brianna one time in a Zoom session like this. Maybe with Dr. Norris, we talked about mindfulness, but I was with her. But I had never been with somebody. I'm usually seeing them on a computer, so it's really nice to actually be with you in person.
It's a pleasure to be here.
To please share your journey. I want to make sure that we talked about it. We did mention energy medicine as a whole, and while we're talking about a couple of different modalities or therapies that fall under the umbrella of energy medicine, Dr. Sager specifically is going to talk about Eden energy medicine time to explain or to differentiate to me between tapping. Tapping is another modality too, which we won't get too much into. It's just I have personal experience with my son on that, but I was curious, what's the difference? So please introduce yourself a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about your journey, and please talk about Eden energy medicine, which is another therapy under the broader umbrella.
Awesome. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
My story is long. I'll give you the short version. I'm a general surgeon by training, so I can assure you that none of these integrative modalities came across my radar at all. And yet what ultimately happened to me was that I burned out because one of the things that I didn't learn in medical school or in my training or in my private practice was that in order to be a skillful healer, you have to be doing your own work. And that was really, really important to me to understand. The thing is that, you know, I'm taking care of a surgeon, and my practice along the way turned out to be mostly breast cancer. You know, it didn't occur to me that I needed to have a way to process the emotion and trauma of dealing with emotion and trauma every day. And so, you know, ultimately, a series of events occurred that made it clear to me that practicing medicine in this way was really not going to work for me. And so I left my practice. You know, back then I thought, well, so it's just, you know, I'm a surgeon. So if somebody comes in with appendicitis and I do surgery, they're fine the next day. So I thought if I cut off my surgery practice, then I'm going to be fine the next day, which was absolutely false. And I was completely shocked to realize the condition that my condition was in. I had a lot of chronic pain, and I had lived with chronic pain for years. Potentially part of it was just from hovering over the operating table for hours and hours. But I think a lot of it is really more of along the lines of a chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia kind of thing. Living with chronic stress affects everything. And one of the most important ways I have heard chronic stress explained or described is a state of highly well-armored hopelessness. And what happens when you live under chronic stress is that you can't, it's not just a thing that's out there. It completely encompasses you. And the way that I like to offer it in my mindfulness classes as a form of explanation is that your nervous system, just like everything else in nature, seeks balance. And when we're out of balance, the things that are taken off the table or taken offline, if you will, are anything that has to do with healing. Because if you're in an immediate life-threatening emergency, you do not need to digest your food, you do not need for your endocrine system to be in alignment, and you do not need a healthy immune system. And so that's fine if we're driving down the highway and a truck is pulling into our lane. It's not fine if we live like that. So just because of my own experience and because of an immune system challenge that I had as a result of a PPD, a tuberculin test that I had to have to teach in a hospital, I had some sort of an immune system dysregulation that I'm still, 15 years later trying to recover from. And I started to be really curious about the nervous system. And I started seeing that nervous system dysregulation seemed really to be at the root of a lot of our common diseases. Because if you think about it, the major things that we spend money on in this country are heart disease, are all kinds of digestive dysregulations and dysfunctions, are endocrine imbalances, and now increasingly unusual immune system dysfunctions that really have come online even since I was in training 20 years ago. New things that nobody talked about that I didn't really learn about. And so I started to say what I do to settle the nervous system. Well, I immediately started practicing meditation, and I was trained with John Kabat-Zinn, and I've taught mindfulness-based stress reduction for 15 years. But over time, it started to be clear to me that that was not quite enough. And what I was understanding about myself, because I was continually working on my own well-being and trying to heal myself, was that my nervous system simply did not know how to settle. I had been sort of locked into this hypervigilant mode. And what happens when you do that is that all of these things that are affected by the lack of relaxation start to break. So I started to figure out what can I do to get my nervous system to relax? One of the first things I did, I had already been teaching yoga I've been teaching yoga for 15 years as well. And I learned Yoga Nidra. So I started teaching Yoga Nidra. That was really helpful to help me have a felt sense of relaxing, and I started to notice how it was helping other people. But then quite enough. So I thought, what can I do to work with my nervous system myself? Because self-empowerment, I think, is a really critical piece of all of this. It's one thing to go and put yourself in the hands of another, but you're the one that lives in this container. So you have information a lot of times that you can't really even verbalize to another person, even if they were able to help you. So I started being really interested in how I might learn to more skillfully speak the language of my body and understand the messages that it was giving to me. So I had found Donna Eden's book 20 years ago, and been curious about some of the things that she said about what different kinds of energy dysfunctions looked like or felt like in the body. And so about 5 years ago, I started to explore that again. And a couple of things really, really stood out for me. First of all, just the recognition that we really do have, but often don't talk about energy. You know, no matter how solid we seem to be, we are 99% space. We are made of vibrating, spinning electrons and protons and all kinds of tiny little particles that are moving through space at such a speed that when they're compressed, it looks like we're solid and real. But there's really mostly space in here, and it's mostly energy. Now, from the medical perspective, we know this because we do EEGs and EKGs and EMGs.
I'm really glad
you know, we do all of these electrical things, and then we deny the fact that we're electrical beings.
It's been deformed based upon energy in our bodies.
Yes, well,
to
that
test
too.
in
Yeah.
mainstream medicine.
Yeah.
I think that's really important for people.
So, and the other piece is that we're sharing in this moment, we are literally sharing energy fields. Information from you is coming to me, information from me is going out, and we're literally merging and melding our energy fields. And so if somebody in this room is carrying something that is heavy and negative, so I started being curious that I felt like I was really sensitive to that kind of energy in the environment. And so when I started doing even energy medicine, I learned some fundamental principles of energy medicine, or of energy in general. So as Dr. Rao says, energy needs to move, and it moves in a bunch of different predictable ways. Let me first say that in the Eden energy method, we study 9 different energy systems, including the meridian system of traditional Chinese medicine. So meridians tend to flow in an orderly fashion that's predictable, which is why you can figure out where to put acupuncture needles to make a difference. But there are other energy systems that have their own way of flowing. And there's the aura, there are the chakras that spin. You know, the aura is around you. There's the Celtic weave that my teacher Donna Eden sees. It's a pattern of figure 8s. It forms like an energetic cocoon around us. There are different energy channels in the body that traditional Chinese medicine recognizes present without feeling overwhelmed or being vulnerable. Central meridian, which runs from the pubis up to the back of the throat at the level of the lower lip, if it's wide open and somebody comes in with a bad attitude, you're going to feel that happen to you. So I started learning all of these things, and I started learning that energy needs to move. Energy needs space to move, and stuck energy causes dis-ease. Maybe it'll be a literal dis-ease down the line, but certainly causes discomfort. And the other thing that's important is that energy starts to form patterns. And in the same way that we create nervous system habits, we can create energetic habits, and we can get stuck in particular ways of being in the world that don't allow us to heal because we're running the same energetic patterns over and over. So the good news about energy is that it can change, and we can change it really in a heartbeat. So I started practicing Eden energy medicine, and that my neck pain and my shoulder pain that I have had for my whole life, I think, started to go away. I have chronic headaches, and they've started to diminish, and I've started to understand more skillfully how to listen to the tiny little information bits that my body gives me, and to use that like as a mindfulness bell to go, okay, wait, something feels off here. You know, did something happen in the environment? Is it a thought? What's going on here? And now I have tools to just slowly shift myself back to a place of balance. When we're functioning in a place of integration and balance, healing's going to occur. And when you trust yourself and are self-empowered, that's going to arise as a result of this state of balance. And that in its own right is going to contribute to the very relaxation and parasympathetic mode that you speak of. So healing is not going, I think, and then again, the challenge is how then do we settle ourselves down if we have this thing that's causing us undue anxiety?
Many. I think to, not to
No,
interrupt
please.
you, because I have so many questions,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there are probably other questions too, but I think there's a couple of points that I feel specifically super passionate about, especially for this community. One is that if you talk to anybody that is hypermobile, for whatever reason, I would gather a lot of people would say that they are highly sensitive, whether it's they're intuitive or something. And we won't go down that rabbit hole yet, but a lot of us are highly sensitive, whether they're somebody like my son who has sensory processing disorder and it was more of an impact on his life daily, or whether they're an empath or intuitive or whatever it is, or they feel like they can affect electronics. That's been a really funny conversation conversation to have. It's been interesting how many of us feel very highly sensitive in one way. It could even just due to lights or sounds, or they cause migraines, whatever it is. But that intuitive part has been kind of taken away from us in mainstream medicine. We have been told and taught in many ways and conditioned to not trust our instinct, especially when it comes to how we feel and our health and what's going on in our bodies. Because if it's not justified by a test, if it's not there, you can't prove it, it's not genetically proven, it's not whatever it is, that it's not there, it's not possible, it's not proven. So this whole idea of going back to being self-empowered and having self-efficacy is also something that I feel very passionate about for this community, because so much has been taken away in terms of us not trusting our bodies. And I think it's not just for my community, but it's also for any chronic illness. Right.
It's with or without chronic illness.
Right. We're taught to not trust our intuition in terms of our health and or to people in one way or another, not just to our community, but just to general people anyway, whether it's what I teach my kids or anything, and also helping to help themselves if they have nothing else. If there's nothing else they have, there's no doctor, there's no provider, there's nothing. What is something that they can do? What is something that they can fall back on? And I feel very strongly about meditation or some kind of mindfulness practice, whatever it is that they do, whether it's cleaning or just moving their leg or something that just brings them back to the state of calm, to just kind of, which does help their sympathetic and their parasympathetic kind of find more stability, because it immediately acts on the nervous system. So I find those 2 points were the one I wanted to say was the intuition and the highly sensitive nature of this community. And I think a lot of people would agree with that in one way or another. And also the fact that the healthcare system has kind of taken that away from us in terms of what is happening in our bodies and how to help ourselves, and putting the self-empowerment that you brought that up.
Yeah, so I'm certainly a scientist by nature, and I like to understand how things make sense. However, I also, as a scientist, am aware that I have two sides to my brain. And one is the side that asks me for evidence.
Right.
That's only the left hemisphere of the brain. The right hemisphere of the brain opens me to my intuition. It opens me to my sensory information. It allows me to take in things that I cannot explain with my left brain. And it's the integration and balance of those two hemispheres of the brain that leads us to a place of trust, that leads us to a place of the possibility of healing. It's sort of my issue with evidence-based medicine, because I have just had the great good fortune to spend an hour with Jill Bolte Taylor, who you may know, who had a stroke as a Harvard neuroanatomist who studied the brain and experienced herself losing all of her left-sided capacity, and yet a whole and really bigger being, if you will, with just her right hemisphere functions intact.
I think her TED Talk is amazing.
My Stroke of
What is it called? It's
My
called
Stroke
My
of
Stroke
Insight.
of Insight.
Yes.
Okay.
So she and I had this discussion that really sort of brought to the table the fact that evidence-based medicine is denying half of us. And, while Western medicine is amazing, there are things that technology is not going to be able to explain. And if you need more science, the science of epigenetics lately is crystal clear that what you think can actually change the way that your genes are expressing themselves. And so this is not magic. It is not out there. It's not woo-woo. It, for me, falls into the realm of quantum physics, whereas the left side of the brain and the evidence basis and the proving everything falls into the stuff that, we can tap on and prove is real. But that, to me, does not diminish the non-local or invisible world, because the invisible world, whether it's your thoughts, your intuition, whether it is the electromagnetic energy coming from that light, that is still impacting me in a way that maybe can't be measured by traditional Western models. And so when I learn how to
limitations, research as we know it now.
Yeah. And so, in my experience, in my opinion, right now, I don't, Western medicine can do its thing, and there are plenty of wonderful things that it can do. But I hope that it will not continue to dismiss the things that cause no harm and simply allow people to live with more ease. Because when you live with more ease, you are contributing positively to your health and well-being.
For sure. I don't think that it really can, in my opinion, as a patient, I see more and more that it really can't be denied, and there's more integration of these different modalities. Not necessarily, people aren't necessarily getting better with these, concrete things, but also there are things that we can't necessarily explain, aren't tangible, but yet also these invisible conditions. Just because you have something to prove on doesn't mean if they're not there, people aren't suffering. And like you said, if it doesn't necessarily hurt somebody, and I use that loosely and not necessarily specifically to this community, but just hurt as a general term, how can we even deny it, you know?
Also, the acupuncture research is limited by the same data that you're talking about, because we're trying to do studies for drug and placebo and cohort studies, but you can't, people know when there's a needle put in. You can't really do a placebo acupuncture study, because no matter where you put the needle, there will be an effect. So an introduction of a needle into the body that's called sham acupuncture if it's not really an acupuncture point. But still, the presence of a needle in the body changes. It's really hard to do studies on acupuncture, in my opinion, because the studies, you can't really do control studies where people get needles and then they don't get needles because people know.
And that's because we're measuring quantitative things.
Yes.
And I'm talking about, or energy work talks more about qualitative things. And I think that a little bit in Western medicine, we dismiss the qualitative things. You know, I just feel better. Well, you shouldn't, because we didn't do anything. It doesn't matter. I feel better. If you feel better, do that. As long as it's not causing harm, do that.
But it also dismisses the placebo effect, which, by the way, is a very fabulous effect. And it's the power of mind-body connection.
Yeah.
And just
And
the
it doesn't mean that it's
perception-
not there and it's not real. There really is something more
Well,
than
it just means that we can't explain it.
Right.
right. As we understand how to explain things right now.
In the traditional, I think, Western medical model, if we can't explain it, or not just in the Western medical model, in the Western way of living, if we cannot explain it, it doesn't exist. You know, it behooves all of us to just sort of take our power back and say, you know, thank you for your time, but I know that when I walk outside barefoot in the grass, I feel more settled. Then, you know, that's not going to hurt anybody.
There was a study recently about grounding.
There's a lot
Yeah,
of
they call it
information
grounding. There was
about
and I think I even shared it because I was like, it's so crazy
Yeah.
that we've actually had to do a study about
I mean, again,
people walking outside barefoot and the exchange of ions in the ground, like to prove that it helps and that there's an actual positive exchange and what that does to our immune
it
system.
also
It's
helps
crazy.
us. It helps to bring it into awareness, though, because, you know, again, we focus on this solid thing that I live in, and we forget that we're made mostly of space. So we're nothing but electrons spinning around in here, creating an energy field that looks like it's real. And, you know, when we start to understand that every single thing is impacting our energy body, you know, the heart math people have measured that the electrical field of the heart is significantly greater than 9. The heart and the gut are where the actual information comes from. Even in the gut, the vagus nerve, which affects pretty much everything below your head, 80% of the fibers of the vagus nerve go from the gut to the brain. So your gut feelings are informing your state of mind. And so this is important information to know. And yet, you know, we dismiss that feeling of that doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
But in my opinion and experience, you know, your body speaks the truth. Your mind is going to try to manipulate it to make it make sense, but your body speaks the truth. And so if we can just learn to listen to the wisdom of the body, and I think for me, more than doing something to someone to make them better, you know, my interest right now is in how do we create the causes, allow your body to do what it knows how to do.
Right.
Like we know how to heal. We have innate, amazing healing capacities. And when we're not embracing that and taking advantage of that, and we're just offering things to fix something that's broken, even the notion of being broken, I believe, is breaking that sense of connectedness and integration. So to like go deeper, make it be more existential, you know, at my core, regardless of what my diagnosis is, I am a whole, complete individual capable of being fully healed, whether or not my disease is cured. Because sometimes we simply have to learn to live with the conditions that we have. But I believe that we can learn to live with them in a way that allows us to come more fully to life than to be paralyzed by them. Because the more we're looking for the next thing to get better, the more we're stirring the chronic stress pot.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I just say, I'm going to have my awareness in just this moment. And when I notice that I'm getting lost in thought about what's happening next, I'm going to come back to here. I'm going to check in with my body. If I notice that I feel off, I can do really simple little energy medicine techniques to bring myself back into a state of integration and balance.
Yeah. I think that that's probably one of the best things. As I told you, I think a lot of us in this community specifically that I work with is incredibly intuitive. And we've just been told and taught and conditioned to not listen to it. But yet I think it's actually one of our biggest powers.
Mhm.
I think it's one of our biggest strengths. So instead of using it as not a strength, as a weakness, as kind of Princess and the Pea, but taking it one step further and switching it and saying, no, this is a strength. This is a good part. I remember growing up, my father used to say, you're so sensitive, you feel everything, you wear everything on your sleeve. It was like I was, conditioned to feel bad about how sensitive I was to the world, to something in the mattress, whatever. And I remember feeling bad and guilty about that. But what I did learn very early on, probably because I had many RMRIs from a very early age, is learn how to meditate. I didn't even realize it to go through these MRIs, but also to realize that sensitivity, while I can also learn how to help myself in the situations like MRIs and meditate when I didn't even realize it, but that sensitivity, which I was told to kind of dismiss and to not show, is actually a strength.
Well,
And I'm darn near proud of it.
when
I
you
gotta
go
be
to
honest.
see somebody like Dr. Rao, who's open,
Yeah.
right? The more information you have to bring her, the more she's going to be able to
Yeah.
help you. So if I don't tell her
Right.
how I really feel when I walk into a room and smell this smell, or if I don't tell her
Yeah. There's
how I feel
right.
when I'm in this particular circumstance, she doesn't know
Yeah.
to use her tools to help
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So it really can become a very important relationship. And another piece of the nervous system work is the polyvagal theory, which is today, but this capacity to create safety and connection is healing in its own right.
Yeah.
So if you find a practitioner that makes you feel like you can tell them the truth, I feel that that's really, really critical. And that is as much of a part of the healing work as any other thing.
Absolutely. And I think it goes even one step further outside of healthcare when you have a parent
Mhm.
or a parent and have kids. And again, it's a strength, I think, and that when you're honest and kind of can feel it and bring it, call it on the table, I think it makes you a better parent.
Well, and again, we're talking here about particular circumstances, but I think that all of these things apply to absolutely all of us. And that if we can just learn to live in a different kind of way, that allows us to perceive what is so and how it affects us without so much judgment and to not suppress. Because suppression of anything causes stuck energy. I mean, it makes you get stuck.
Right.
And stuck energy causes disease.
Well, I have a few questions that people have. There's still 3 people. I don't see any questions. If anybody has any questions, please answer or put in the Q&A or the chat. I have a few bullet points that I want to ask Dr. Singer and Dr. Rao. But if you have any questions or comments that we've said or talked about or want more information on, please put it in the chat or the Q&A. Can you give us maybe like a quick example of what does Eden energy medicine look like?
Mm-hmm. So,
without going, I didn't want to put you on the spot. But just people might not have a clue what it looks like.
So the thing about Eden energy, the most important thing, like right off the top, before you know anything else about Eden energy medicine, is that because we are electric beings, we have the power to heal in our hands. We can, you know how this goes. It's fall outside now, and you're going to touch something, and there's going to be an electric spark. It's because there's too much energy there and here. So we know that we share energy, and we generally, and a lot of our acupuncture meridians begin and end in the hands and feet. So the way that we place our hands can make a difference in how energy flows through the body. So just as a quick example, the most important first thing for Eden energy work is something called the daily energy routine. It's a series of very, very simple little exercises that you can do every day that effectively takes that static out of your system. So if you are overcharged and every time you touch something, there's static electricity, then, and above and beyond that, like every day I do this crazy little thing, and it looks very silly and it looks very simple. And those of us who like
patients, I started doing it and I started teaching my patients because it's amazing.
But all of us that like complicated things, it seems really dumb, right?
Yeah,
it seems really dumb.
It seems silly.
It's a silly thing, but it works.
So a couple of things, a couple of important premises. First of all, the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. The left side of the brain controls the right side of the body. This is, and yet when we're stressed out, our energies are meant to cross over in this kind of way, in a figure 8 kind of pattern. And when we get stressed, our body stops crossing because it's really sort of trying to hold energy. It doesn't want to waste energy. It wants to use all of the energy for the problem at hand. But because energy can form habits, if that stays there for too long, we stop crossing over. So if you're just minding your own business and you just feel tired, like I can't quite move through space, you can simply do a crossover. You can either march in place crossing over, or you can just reach over one shoulder and swipe energy.
Really? So
all the way down and off
really?
the other
Okay,
side.
so if you're feeling like you're tired, you're feeling like you're just, your brain's not functioning, like this is like a daily thing.
That's why it's called the daily energy routine.
Yeah.
So
This is
like
twice a
daily,
day.
and then
This
And
is like,
then-
I do this all the time. This is how I feel all the time. So, like literally,
literally cross over. Now you can actually this,
what
you
I've
can
heard,
do
can you
whatever.
swing like this?
You
like,
can swing,
like
but
this?
and you can also just draw figure eights because that's just reminding the body that
Also
in an
like
energy
this.
field.
Oh yeah. Well, I learned that in
My
tapping,
my
which
teacher Donna Eden sees energy, and in your field outside your body are figure eights in all kinds of different shapes and colors. So figure eights remind us of the crossover. Yes, the
was-
tapping.
right.
It's a little bit different than
Yeah.
the usual kind of tapping. But what if you feel like you're flaky and flighty and you can't settle? Tapping your cheekbones. This is the beginning point for the stomach meridian. Stomach is about worry. So when you're just there's too much stuff going on, you can just tap your cheekbones.
And you know what's interesting is sometimes when you start, it hurts.
Yeah.
But the more you do it, the less sore it is.
And so that's another important point, right? Because if energy is stuck, it causes pain. So if something is tender, literally, I think of it like, if there's a ball of energy and I tap on it, it slowly starts. A lot of times it will be tender.
And
If you feel like you just can't, like I've got to walk over to the end of the street and I don't feel like I've got enough energy, tapping here on that, just right below, there's this little
so your
V.
clavicle, right?
Just on the inside edge of your clavicle, there's a little ball,
Yeah.
and then you drop down and out. There's a hollow
Yeah.
spot.
Oh, yeah.
This is the last point, accessible point on kidney meridian.
I've been doing this so
Kidney
long.
meridian
This is
draws
also
energy
very
up
important
from the
point for
earth.
head and neck.
Well, the tapping points, I know that Eden energy medicine is a little bit different, so I wanted to review. So you're saying if you're just feeling a little flighty, like your brain's just not there. A lot of us deal with cognitive issues. That's why I was laughing. I'm like, fatigue and cognitive is like daily for me.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just
Just cross.
swipe.
Yeah.
Or you could.
I
do
also think
this.
you guys should check out Dr. Sager's website and she has a course.
I've got it. Yeah, I've got a
yes.
bunch of different.
So that's what,
things.
before I talk about the tapping, my tap, which is, I know it's not the same as Eden energy medicine, but just as what it did for my son was just amazing. But if somebody wants more information on Eden energy medicine, or even look into kind of anything that's been written about it, where they find it, your website?
My website has some information, and I'm in training with Donna Eden, who is sort of the master.
She has a book.
She's got a book called Energy Medicine.
Yeah.
She's got tons and tons of videos on YouTube that you can look at, and I do have some courses
Yeah.
that I put together.
So I will tell you that I've taken Donna Eden's course as well, and I found it a little bit hard to process because I'm left brain dominant, and I like Dr. Sager's course because she kind of makes it more attuned for the left brain people.
Yeah.
So for me, it was easier to understand when I did your course.
Well, especially
because-
if you're a practitioner, I would
yeah.
imagine.
So,
that it's-
but I think they're all fabulous, and of course, Donna has a lot of great stuff out there too.
There's also some great short videos on YouTube just to understand, like how do you do these little things. You have some I've seen and they've been great.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to just understand from a visual perspective more of what
Well,
does
I
this
think
mean? What
it
does
is,
this look
it's
like?
really about doing it.
Yeah.
And so the other good thing, since energy follows intention, is if you really physically can't do these things, you can visualize yourself doing it. Or if you can move your head, you can just, make X's in the air. Nobody can't not do this with all of those double negatives.
Yeah.
Everybody can do this.
Yeah.
So there's that. And also another one for the immune system is just tapping the thymus gland.
Is that in the middle of the
Right in the middle of the chest. Yeah, in the middle of the breastbone.
It hurts in the beginning too.
Yeah. But to your point about the tapping part of it, so there is the therapy or modality.
EFT.
When my son was diagnosed with sensory processing disorder at a very, very young age, I knew from day 2 in the hospital. He's not autistic, but he came out just screaming, and he used to bang the crap out of his head. Now, mind you, being a thin-skinned, fair child, like he had bruises all over his head. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? So when he finally was diagnosed, and it was actually at 10 months, pretty early, the wonderful child psychologist that we work with, she taught us how to do tapping. And at this point, this kid would just, he didn't know how to talk, and he would just, a raindrop would just set him off for hours. None of the 5 S's for colicky kids worked. It was, it was just so far beyond anything I could ever explain. And I thought, okay, I'm this calm in the storm of this child. How am I going to help him? I don't know what to do. All the 5 S's, all this stuff that I did for my older son, kid down. So one of the things that he was diagnosed with sensory is your five senses plus your sixth sense, which they call it, they call it your internal vestibular or something. Well, he was his internal sense that they called it an itch you can't scratch was off for him, plus some other things. So she taught us tapping to help bring calm to his nervous system for things we couldn't identify that it was a sound or a light or something. So she taught us tapping, and it was like here, is there something here, maybe something here? Yeah. So I would start doing this, and my husband, I would start doing this, and Brian would be like, "What are you doing? Like, this is just this kid's, he's going crazy." And he would scream for hours, and we didn't know how to help him, and it sounded like he was hurt. And we just couldn't identify anything. So I had nothing else to lose other than just start tapping. And I had seen finally Brian, out of just urge and just not knowing what to do, started doing the tapping to Seamus. And sure enough, immediately, it was like a light switch. It was like something I could never even describe. I mean, it still to this day gives me chills because I don't even know how to explain it. And he was so young, we never called it by anything. But after we moved, within the last year, we moved to Frederick County. And Seamus was going to bed, and he was very anxious about school. And he's now almost 11, and he's in 5th grade. And he actually said, "Mom, can you please," mind you, this has been several years since we've done this, and I never named it. I never, he could barely talk when we really were doing it, hadn't been doing it for many years. He said, "Mom, can you please do that tapping thing? Remember that thing you used to do to help me calm down?" And I mean, of course, I'm like floodgates. I'm like crying. I'm like, oh my gosh, he remembered. But we never named it. We never really talked about it. But he remembers. Yeah. He did. He described it the best way he could describe it. And he's like, "Can you please do that?" And I thought, how great was it that not only did he remember it, that I never thought, but that he was advocating enough for himself to say, "Can you help me? Because that's what I need help calming down. Please help me." And it's great. It was just, I don't even know how to explain it, but that was just the most amazing thing.
So one of my favorite Eden energy medicine things for that, when you just feel like you just can't, 2 things. One is just to make an okay sign. Put your thumbs in your temples. Okay. And the 3 remaining fingers in the center of your forehead. These are actually in Eden energy medicine called the "Oh my God" points. So just close your eyes and take a couple of breaths and see if anything shifts.
It'll make me help me feel more calm from going to the Nationals game tonight.
And you may want to take a deeper breath, which is a sign of your nervous system relaxing. So I can just hear in this room how both of your rates of breathing have dropped. Do you feel it?
Very amazing.
And it's immediate.
We're very good students.
Could do this all day.
And then the other thing, just real quick, because it's usually so relevant, is we have a lot of anger and energy, and just like, I need to get rid of this. You can literally just imagine putting all of your stuff in your hands that you just can't take anymore, and you just literally 3 times, and then just a slow time. And it just, it's almost as if we're sitting here like a pressure cooker, and just releases that energy, and you often feel immediately more settled.
Dr. Georgia DeGandy also taught us that for James and for my kids. It's amazing how much stuff that you talk about that is so relative to what Dr. DeGandy taught us, who's the child psychologist that my kids saw for many years, that she incorporated in her practice and working with kids and with special needs. But I mean, just so much of
well, these things go back a long way. Some of these are mudras that have been associated with in Ayurvedic, and the other thing is, we do this when we're stressed.
So that's
right.
Our bodies.
That's
are
what I was going to say.
Right.
This is the
you go like
reason.
this.
The reason there are so many overlaps is because this is not something that somebody discovered. This is just observation over time that our bodies know what to do. You might say you don't know what to do to help yourself.
Yeah, or you put your hand like this.
So because your body knows what to do, but then we ignore it, or we're in a situation where it's not appropriate to do it, so we don't do it. you know, but putting your hand on your forehead, these are the, oh my God points that will settle you down every single time.
Or Brian, my husband, will say, you're huffing and puffing. And I'm saying, no, I'm deep breathing.
So yes,
If
it's,
you can
it's a
naturally go to that,
remembrance
yeah.
of ancient ways of being that we already knew as just human beings trying to survive in this lifetime before we had to figure everything out or say, oh, you know what, it doesn't make sense. There's no way to prove that you're putting your hand on your head is going to make you feel better, so let's don't do that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So no, this is really remembering the truth of who you are and the power that you already have.
Yeah, there's actually a couple questions, and before I want to make sure I get to those, and I do want to make sure that we touch on Yoga Nidra because I love Yoga Nidra so much. I know you at Lollapalooza.
I saw the colors brighter the first
Oh
time
man, I was floating. But Yoga Nidra is just its own special, and I want to make sure we talk about that and explain how that's different than like John Kabat-Zinn's meditation, mindfulness-based meditation, where people can find Yoga Nidra information. I know I taught it at Lollapalooza, and it was awesome. I mean, people really, I had never taught it. I was a yoga instructor, but I had never taught it. And people really, I mean, I had all the bolsters and the props and, you know, people just loved it. Well,
and so the first thing to say about Yoga Nidra is that it has a lot of really important possibilities. It runs a spectrum of things that can happen. And certainly enlightenment is on that spectrum. But it's my opinion that in this culture in which we live, the thing that is the most missing for most of us is rest. You know, your nervous system requires rest. And since we're so wired for stress, so at least in my hands, I teach Yoga Nidra for rest right now. I mean, if you happen to become enlightened in the course of the Yoga Nidra, then good for you. But I think most of us need rest, and everything is going to work better if you're rested.
Absolutely.
So this is a systematic way to, frankly, relax the nervous system and bring you into a state of hypothalamic, pituitary, and adrenal balance. And when you're in that state of quiet and balance, images can be introduced in that time that literally will start to stir up the subconscious mind and release just suppressed memories, suppressed emotions, suppressed traumas even, without having a physiologic effect. So it's like talk therapy without the talking. It's, you know, without the reactivity. And it has the possibility to heal a lot of different things. And in fact, in the ancient text of Yoga Nidra, I'm trained in this, and all of the diseases that we talk about treating this day and age in the ancient yogic traditions are said to be psychosomatic, right? Because there's a disconnect between heart and head. There's a disconnect between gut, your intuition, and your head. There's a break in the system, and when you bring yourself back into integration and balance, amazing healing is really possible. So I have a particular way of teaching Yoga Nidra. I studied with students of Swami Satyananda Saraswati, and so my Yoga Nidras are about an hour and a half long because most of us take a long time to sort of settle down. It is not Shavasana. It is a completely different story, and it really requires,
in terms of what people are.
It's
a
lying
type
on the
of
ground.
meditation.
It's a type of meditation and guided imagery.
Yeah.
But specifically designed to work with the subconscious mind. So really, I mean, you have to know what you're doing when you work with it because you're working with people's subconscious mind.
Yeah. I like to call it yoga in the brain because people are like, what is it? What do you do? And because people hear yoga, and I'm like, it's not necessarily yoga in terms of moving in the way that people get sometimes very nervous.
Yoga, on the other hand, yoga's not about moving.
Right, exactly.
You know, yoga means balance or joining, right? It's yoke.
Right. Well, traditional people in the mainstream world right now just don't know the bigger, broader, what yoga really is and what it means. So to them, it means this intense vinyasa or, you know, athletic power flow. And they're like, you're nervous about getting injured, which is also something that I love to teach is yoga for hypermobility. But with that being said, there are different types of yoga, and Yoga Nidra is a type of meditation, and it's not necessarily, you're moving. It's not necessarily Shavasana either.
No, it's really not Shavasana.
Yeah, but you are laying down. It's a type of meditation. I like to call it yoga in the brain. It helps you get away outside of yourself, or like saying it's just a different type of way of like, I don't know how best to describe it. Just getting out of your head.
I would just say that it's really more about coming home to your true self, not getting away from yourself, because we are away from ourselves. That's why we're suffering. it's coming back to
Well,
who
helping
I
your,
really
I guess
am.
maybe helping your thoughts calm down, as a lot of us would sit there and try to meditate and be like, thoughts are racing, racing, racing. I think it's a wonderful way of helping just calm that.
Well, and again, for people that are in their heads, I think it helps to say that it's really calming the nervous system.
And I
In a way
think
that you
the
can't
other
actively
big
do
thing
it.
with when Dr. Sager does yoga nidra is you say specifically you're doing yoga nidra, but do not fall asleep. But then you always say it's okay to fall asleep.
Yeah, it's okay to fall asleep, but the intention is to we're trying to create a state of awareness that allows more possibility than what we allow in our conditioned way. So the intention is to stay awake, and that's really more for enlightenment, in higher yogic work. However, I soften that because most of us are sleep deprived. The current statistics are that 86% of Americans are sleep deprived, and that's just unacceptable.
Yeah.
And that's at the root of many of our diseases too. If we're not rested, we're not going to heal even if we're taking the right medicine.
Rest is a huge issue for me personally too, and I know for many people that also are in this community that I serve, because a lot of us have pain. We wake up different things at night. I don't want to take anything to necessarily help me go to sleep, but I have to tell you, yoga nidra was like a saving grace for me when I was at a yoga retreat, and it was so hot in Costa Rica, and I didn't know how to calm down, and I would put my headphones on, and my roommate snored, and I couldn't really it just couldn't calm down, and I was just so hot, and you've got this mosquito netting around, and I just would sit there, and it was just amazing, and it was wonderful at the time. But I also listened to your podcast that you did with Dr. Rao, and you were talking a lot about the sleep statistics, and I love that you talked about that, because it is so true and so needed, especially for this community that we're talking about.
And just a really quick energy medicine thing: when you wake up at night,
Yeah.
you can't go back to sleep. One finger in the belly button, one in the middle of your forehead. Push in and pull up. It's called a hookup.
Does it have to be the left or right?
Doesn't have to be,
Okay,
no. So push in and pull up, and just take a couple of deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth, thinking that you're drawing energy in and sort of blowing it out. Not really hard, but you're inviting it to move. And this will help put you back to sleep if you wake up in the night. And you may just feel a deeper breath here as the nervous system accepts this shift. So this is really important. Or if you don't want to use just your fingers, you can just put a hand on your foot, a hand on your belly,
your hand.
Whatever. You're just inviting. You're working here with central meridian. Central meridian, when it's open, is allowing all this information to come in. So you're working to close it.
Yeah. When you were doing this, do the three fingers
go right, sort of up from your eye?
Up from your eye.
You're working. This is bladder meridian, stomach meridian points.
All the things I need greatly.
And then triple wormers in the and that's really part of
I love these
Chinese
easy
medicine
things just for
version
people to do. I wish there was just a chart.
Well, there's a daily energy routine.
Yeah. I might try to figure out a way to the simple things that we just did in here, to try to put them on a PDF with your question. Yes. So, all right. So the question, we're getting ready to wrap up. Somebody says, coming back from the beach, practicing breathing and energy from home. So she didn't have a question. She was just saying that she was practicing it while doing that.
Good for you.
Does anybody else have any other questions that before we end? I think we talked about yoga. Can you just explain one last time where people can find more information on yoga nidra, and also how it's different than other types of meditation?
Yeah, so you can find information about yoga nidra on my website, which is just ginasager.com. There's a whole page on yoga nidra. There's a page on Eden energy medicine, and I do have MP3s that are available too. The difference between, Shavasana is for relaxation. Yoga nidra, again, I don't want to confuse. Yoga nidra is really not about relaxation. It's about realigning your nervous system. It's about realigning your subconscious mind. It's about literally starting to recognize that every experience that we have in life is making an impression in the subconscious. We're not conscious. We're living our lives based upon whatever seeds were planted there somewhere along our lifetime. So we're becoming, I describe it in my teaching, that we're becoming conscious gardeners. There's way too much sensory information coming in, and it's all living in your subconscious mind because it just has to, because we're energetic beings. It comes in and sticks. Yoga nidra opens that space so that we can start to move the stuff that doesn't resonate with my heart, that doesn't resonate with my truth, and deliberately start to plant seeds that allow me to come into whatever my fullest, most magnificent glory is. It's not going to look like anybody else's in the world,
Right.
because the other important piece that energy medicine speaks to, at least Eden energy medicine, is the recognition that our energetic signature is as unique as a thumbprint. And so that's the other piece that Western medicine sort of misses, you know, but we're each individuals. Nobody's going to look like anybody else. Nobody's going to be one of a kind. And our job is to embrace our truth as best and skillfully as we can, so that we can bring ourselves fully to life.
Yeah, I think that goes along with what we just also said in terms of what works for one person isn't necessarily going to work
Right.
for another one, and that you know, these ideas and the different things that we had talked about during this program or this webinar is all for information and educational purposes only, just to open up the idea of different therapies, modalities that are out there, and how to find information about them and how to try them, and especially in a way that if it doesn't necessarily, you know, what could it hurt, depending upon what it is and the person's mobility and capability level, but how to approach something like this and find information and see if it's part of their recipe to help them restore function and live well. Yeah. Anything else that you all would like to add? Thank you for being here. Thank you
pleasure.
for
Yeah.
being part of it.
Thank you.
I'm glad that a couple people were able to join us,
Yeah.
and thank you again for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad that a couple people were able to join us,
Yeah.
and thank you again for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, thank you.